I would like to advise all those present that notice of this regular meeting of March 15th, 2023 has been provided to the public in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Act of the State of New Jersey. Notice of time and place of this meeting has been included in the annual notice of meetings, which was posted and filed with the city clerk and with the Jersey Journal and the Star Ledger. An additional notice of time and place was posted and filed with the city clerk and was forwarded to the Jersey Journal and Star Ledger on March 10th, 2023. The regular meeting of the Municipal Council of the City of Bayonne is now in session. Ms. Medina, please call the roll.
Mr. Booker?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Mr. Perez?
Here.
Ms. Weimer?
Here.
Mr. La Palusa?
Here, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Our first item is 01, which is a repeat because it was advertised incorrectly, so it's up for a second reading and a public hearing again. And it is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, adopting an amended and restated redevelopment plan for the property located at 69 – let me make sure I have the right one. Nope, that's the problem. Adopting the Central Constable Hook redevelopment plan for the property identified as Block 465, Lot 9, Block 466, Lot 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Block 471, Lot 1 and 1.01, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne. It was introduced and passed the first reading at the meeting held January 18, 2023, was published in the Jersey Journal, and posted on the bulletin boards required by law, with notice that it will be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of March 15, 2023, and is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And the resolution moved by the council as a whole, giving the ordinance second reading. And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, New Jersey, adopting the Central Constable Hook redevelopment plan for the property identified as Block 465, Lot 9, Block 466, Lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Block 478, 1 and 1.01, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak.
Yes.
Good evening, Gail Godesky, 828 Kennedy Boulevard. Is this referring to Exxon and IMTT property? Is this going to be looked at in conjunction with the study regarding the piping, et cetera, that we talked about, I think, in the January meeting about revamping and looking at where all this piping is? Council President?
I'm going to have Mr. Skillender answer that.
Very good, thank you. Director?
So, again, part of this ordinance, again, is clearing up a potential issue with the notice. However, for that, again, the redevelopment plan does contemplate the infrastructure that will be needed to be built on this site to, again, have a warehouse, to have an old abandoned oil tank farm become back onto productive property.
Right, but are you going to be doing a study regarding the piping and what needs to be cleaned up simultaneously, or are you just looking at what can we build on this property?
So right now, again, this is with the redevelopment plan, and that the redeveloper of this property is taking all that into consideration of, remediating the site, having the appropriate, stormwater, sanitary, and then also raising of the site to meet the new FEMA flood standards. So yes.
So it will be, because it's going to impact the entire city, basically.
I think you're asking the larger question where we talked about the entire, looking at the entire.
Yes.
This has to be part and parcel of that. This is going to proceed independently at the same time, or coterminously with us looking at the plan for the entire area, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director.
Anyone else? No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
So move.
And a second? And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And resolution ordering final passage.
So move.
Second? And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
02 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, approving a financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and Togus Urban Renewal LLC for the property identified as Block 332, Lot 3, Block 360, Lot 2, Block 390, Lots 1 and 2, and Block 391, Lots 1 and 2, which was introduced and passed the first reading at a meeting held January 25th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for a final passage at the meeting of February 15th, which at that meeting was postponed to this meeting of March 15, 2023, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And the resolution giving the ordinance second reading is moved by the council as a whole. On the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, approving a financial agreement by and between the City of Bayonne and Togus Urban Renewal LLC. And now the council is ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak.
Yes.
Good evening again, Gail Godesky, 828 Kennedy Boulevard. Okay. Council, in January and February, you did the right thing. You held off to do the research and gave the public additional time to do more research. I'm hoping that today's meeting you will do the same and reconsider. As previously noted, I am not against this project. However, I am against the $65 million guarantee. That being said, why does a French financier or his investors need our guarantee for $65 million with almost a billion-dollar project? Noted at the January meeting, one of the representatives stated that due to inflation, the major changes were made to the design. I noted that they were major.
Please
They
stick to the
noted-
topic for the financial.
Yes,
agreement.
it's coming, Gary.
Okay.
$65 million is part of the financial agreement. Due to inflation, the major changes were made to the design. I noted that they were major. I believe they considered them to be minor. For myself and others, the project lost some major pieces and does not warrant a $65 million guarantee. Why can't the group go to the outside for the additional funding? Is it inflation or the low interest rate that the City of Bayonne will be giving? The past few days, we have seen a decline in the financial markets. Interest rates on commercial and construction are declining, where bonds are increasing. So my question is, I don't know if that will impact the area redevelopment bond rate, and I would like to know the answer to that. So will it impact the rate? Is the rate already set? Is the rate going up? Council President.
I'm going to call Mr. Baumann up to answer these questions for you.
I know, we talked already, yep. Oh, Mr. Hanley.
As well.
The rate is a market rate that will be based on whatever the market determines at the time the bonds will be sold. So it can go up, it can go down, and, you know, we will know when the bonds are actually issued.
Okay.
So you don't know the rate currently, right now? So it's not set yet, correct?
It will be a market rate at the time the bonds are issued.
Okay. If this is passed, when will the bonds be issued?
We will be working with whatever timeline it takes to process the documents and for the developer to deal with their financing as well.
Okay, don't go away. We are a municipality, not a lending facility, that would be getting a double perk. They'll be getting a tax abatement, and they'll be getting $65 million guarantee. With the massive number of pilots this administration has handed out, you should be familiar with the but-for test. Again, yes, I understand in some cases pilots were needed years back so we can get our development started. For those that do not know what the but-for test is used for, it's used to ensure that new development or other activity that renders a property eligible for a tax abatement would not occur but for the tax break. This is a standard intended to ensure that the benefit is applied only when necessary to stimulate needed development and not in cases where investment would have taken place anyway. I think based on the comments made by Mr. Bernicki, excuse me if I pronounced your name wrong, Mr. Hanley, and Mr. Baumann, you were committed to this project at all times. So my question to you is, without this $65 million and the tax abatement, would this project move forward?
No.
It would not. Why?
Just for the record, this is Mr. Hanley.
Oh, Mr. Hanley.
That's Mr. Beneke. He works for the developer. Mr.
Oh,
Hanley
there
works
he
for the
is. I
city of
thought-
Bayonne.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Mr.
Baumann
Baumann
works for the
took-
city of Bayonne.
Okay.
But we should, have a good record here, right? There aren't a massive amount of pilots given out by this administration. This administration has been elected for a certain period of time, and I don't know the exact number. It's either very low or none, right?
For this group, not that many.
Well, for this
So-
group, they
so
just
we
came
should-
on board in
but no,
July.
but we should be truthful when we're talking about things.
Yes.
This administration has definitely not given up a massive amount of pilots.
I'm talking the past 8 years, Mr. Hanley. Let me.
Okay, but that's not this administration. So this project is a really complex project, and it's an incredible benefit to the city. What we're doing is providing some financing that is secured by a massive amount of assets. We have protected ourselves in lots of ways by having a huge amount of collateral, a tremendous loan-to-value ratio. And we are providing a small cost of funds benefit to the developer in order to make this happen, because we have a site that's been terrible and has been terrible for years, requires large amounts of remediation. We're getting public improvements and a huge amount of tax dollars. And all those things are being done for what is, I agree, a huge amount of money to most of us, but a $65 million credit enhancement, which is what we're providing, to a nearly $1 billion investment in our city that can provide thousands of jobs. And by the way, this is not the deal we started with.
Mr.
This is
Hanley,
a
let
long
me-
way- I'm talking, right?
Go ahead,
You
go
can-
ahead.
You can talk when I'm done. We negotiated for, years to get to where we are, and this is the very best deal we can do and make the project happen. And it's been improved at various municipal levels. There have been tons of hearings. It's been improved at the state level. And this is what we believe is a great version of a public-private partnership. There are probably, I can't think of many others, if any other deals that create $1 billion of investment in the city and provide thousands of jobs. So I think it's work that we collectively are all very proud of and think that will be very beneficial to the residents of Bayonne. It will both lower taxes and create local high-paying jobs, which is not common in the redevelopment space. Often you get revenue with no jobs, or you get jobs with very little revenue. So I and the group, I think, want this to succeed because it's really going to help the city.
Mr. Hanley, as I stated as soon as I came up to the podium, I am not against this project. What I am against is the $65 million guarantee. So again, my question is, hypothetically speaking or literally speaking, you have $1 billion project.
I don't have a
All right,
billion-dollar project. Wait,
hypothet-
I work for the city. I explained why I have recommended to the city and why I think the city wants to do this project. And this cumulative economic deal, including the 65 million and the pilot, is what makes the project happen.
Why do we need the $65 million? If the project is worth $1 billion, why do we need the $65 million? Is it because you cannot get the balance of the funding without that $65 million guarantee? Yes or no?
It is because the cumulative economics of the deal that's been negotiated over many years require the incentives that we are providing in order to bring it to the city.
So, basically, on page 4 and page 5 of the financial agreement, the property includes approximately 1,555,830 square feet of total building, of which 500 square feet are structured parking garage, and approximately 17 discrete buildings across 58 upland acres, as well as adequate parking facilities for approximately 2,190 cars. So for the structured parking garage and the 2,190 cars, are those two separate? So you're going to have a parking garage and plus 2,190 parking spaces?
I mean, I'm not in the design of the project. It has what it has. I mean, this has been through the planning board.
No, I just want
It's been through a lot.
to know, are they one and the same?
This is a question about the financial agreement, right?
Yes, it's in the financial agreement, that's what
I
I'm
get it,
talking
but-
about.
But that portion, that just describes what you're looking at
It's a
describes the
description.
project.
So
and
whatever
what's-
you read is what it has.
It includes the garage, because it's not worded that way. Just to clarify, in my opinion, it's not worded that way. So the project also includes substantial on-site infrastructure, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, utility line, and draining, and it goes on. Such redevelopment will require significant capital improvements, including demolition of existing structures, etc. And the bulkhead improvements, they have already started, correct? Yes, okay. And yet it has not been approved, but construction has already started, which
No,
I'm...
no,
They
no,
were
no.
allowed to build that through DEP. Go ahead.
But construction hasn't started. There's some pre-construction work that you have to do. Construction means going vertical, building buildings. There's certain pre-construction work that has to be done. This is their property. If they want to build a 100-foot wall or build things on it, they're free to do that. If it's inconsistent with the plan that they submitted, then that's on them. Gail, if we approve this tonight, they don't start the project tomorrow. They've started this project 3 or 4 years ago. As soon as they purchase it, prior to purchasing it, when they're doing their due diligence, they started the project. So all you have now is all the pre-construction work that needs to be done, the DEP work, the remediation, the making sure that the property is what they think it is. And the permits that have been pulled haven't been for putting up warehouses or putting up buildings. It's just been for the pre-construction demolition, and shoring up of everything. So it's all pre-construction. And when this statute is fairly careful about when you go vertical, and your but for is kind of a red herring. But for this RAB and this pilot, we don't have, in all likelihood, a PLA. And without a PLA, we're not getting this project done. So that's the but for. All these things had to factor together to coalesce, to have everybody in this room in agreement. $65 million is a huge amount of money.
Yes, it is.
In the scheme of things, however, if you look at the totality of the circumstances, it's a small amount of money. Big amount of money to the city of Bayonne if secured by something that's 10 times, more than 10 times its value, it's not that much money, and it's not our obligation to pay back. We've over-securitized it. You have a lending background. You have to understand the LTV. And you and I talked for an hour today, and we talked about markets and everything. If this, and you and I also talked about the fact that on a Tuesday, you wake up in the morning, and the market's dead, and nothing gets built for years. That could happen. We're going through some problems right now in the banking industry. I don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know how it's going to turn out. It could turn out to be a blip on the screen. It could turn out to be a catastrophe. We don't know. If this, it could be that this doesn't, if we have a financial calamity, this doesn't get built. And you know what? That'd be a tragedy for Bayonne. When you're concerned about this 65 million, why do we have to do that? It shows that we have some skin in the game. We're committed to this. This is the city of Bayonne. We're doing something that's going to be transformative. And that $65 million, while a lot of money, is a small amount when you look at what we're investing in. It's a smart investment. And we don't spend dime one until they're set and ready to go. They have their financing in order. It's not, we're giving you $65 million and they walk away.
Jay, my question was not answered. If not for the $65 million, would they still receive the additional financing? So this is the part that I would like to know.
The but-for is for the financial agreement. The
Yes.
but-for, as far as I understand, isn't for the wrap. The but-for, go ahead, Mike.
It was answered twice. I said yes twice. This is part of the package that makes the deal happen.
So you need this, you need the city of Bayonne.
I don't need
65
anything.
Well, all right.
The project
we need the
needs
65 million.
this. Yes, it needs the pilot and the RAB bond that are associated with this project. It was negotiated over a number of years. This is part of the cumulative package that gets us what we want as the city.
Okay, the next question I have on the financial agreement is, and the requirement for specialized tenant improvements. What specifically are the tenant improvements we're talking about here, the specifications?
Because it's
Last time I stood next to the young lady.
Yes.
So the specialized improvements include things such as light racks, built-in stanchions, globes for IMAX theaters, things like that, simulators, computer systems, and all sorts of specialized equipment to handle the film production business.
Okay, don't go away. The period of lease out and unknown cost of the tenant build-out material increase the risk and the pure tenant costs of the project. What specifically are the pure tenant costs of the project?
Such things as workshops.
Is that the
stage.
easements? Is there easements involved in this?
No, not at all. It's all interior work, and the interior work includes workshops, it includes stage design, it includes all sorts of staging materials and film sets. That's what the tenant improvements revolve around.
Okay, so the tenant will be responsible for doing that? Or
It depends. It depends upon the final production. If it's a long-term production, it will probably be joint. If it's a short-term production, it'll be the tenant's responsibility.
Okay, staying on the tenants, do we have any tenants in the pipeline right now?
No, we have to get the financing in line, and we have to start the vertical construction, which should start or begin sometime around midsummer. And I think that's consistent with the last time we spoke.
Okay, so the reason for the financial agreement and the $65 million, in my opinion, says, as a result, in the current real estate marketplace, the rents are likely to be achieved by this project are not sufficient to pay for the costs of the construction and the payment of future full taxes. However, current taxes and required annual tax levy increases thereon shall be paid. Can somebody explain that statement to me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's like a catch, it's kind of like a,
Yeah,
it's kind of convoluted, I'm confused.
Yeah, so they have to pay current taxes, and they can never pay less than their current taxes ever. So that's what that refers to
Okay, but it says, "The rents likely to be achieved by this project are not sufficient to pay for the costs of the construction and the payment of future full taxes."
So that goes to the exact point that Mike was making for you, which is that the anticipated revenues from the project would be insufficient to support a project on full taxes without the $65 million. That's the but-for test. So what he's saying is, if the future tenants, which we don't know who they are, but they have market studies and they can estimate what those revenues will be, those revenues from this operation of this project, so it's an operating business, those revenues wouldn't be sufficient to pay full taxes on this property and pay their debt. and
Without the
equity.
tax abatement and the $65 million.
Right. So
How easy was that? Where were you at the last meeting,
I don't know.
the special meeting?
I'm here now. So that's the answer to your but-for test.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baumann. Let me just finish. Now, you say it includes the park and waterfront walkways, which is part of any plan that we built here in Bayonne. But it is part of green space, and we need green space in Bayonne because we got all concrete parks these days.
Right.
So my question is, are you willing and able, not right away, because I know you guys have construction things, they're building a 26-story building with 3-bedroom apartments. Are you willing to, if the project goes well, to not only do internships and projects for the students and the future of Bayonne, which are our students, are you willing to give more for the education of the future of Bayonne?
I think what the developers said all along is they want to be part of the fabric of Bayonne in any way they can that makes sense. So in the agreement, we specifically call out the Board of Education and students, but I'm sure there'll be all sorts of ways that they'll engage the community. They're not going to be an island. They've been pretty clear with us from the beginning. They've said it at multiple public meetings, so I'm certain that whatever opportunities that they will have to engage with the community and that the community wants to engage with them, I'm confident that they will do that.
Well, 30 years is a long time. It's
Well,
a
hopefully
very
it'll-
long time. So we'll all be up on a cloud eating vanilla ice cream, and I hope it goes through. I hope it meets the requirements and what you guys are saying, because I know you're going to approve it regardless of what I say. But there's still questions that really need to be answered. You know, the future of Bayonne, we should be building businesses and infrastructure and schools instead of bonding at a low rate for a project. Yes, it's going to give jobs. It's going to give union jobs. Like I said, I'm not against the project. I'm just against, in today's economic environment, and as a former banker, I'm a little hesitant with this $65 million. But Mr. Hanley, thank you for answering my question. This project to the public would not be able to take place if not for that $65 million. And that's really sad. I'm sure there's an investor out there that can put up the $65 million instead of the city of Bayonne.
65 and the pilot. Both
And the
correct.
pilot.
Yeah, they're
Thank
both-
you.
they're both- yeah.
Joe, can I just make one point for the council? I just want to make one point for the councils, for the record, if I might, Council
Sure,
President.
yes.
The but-for
Yeah,
test,
excuse me, hold on one second. Please, let's not have side conversations. If you have something to say and you want to come up, we'll gladly. Yeah, but can you just wait 1 minute, because Mr.
yeah, I
Beneke
just
was
want to make
speaking.
one clarification on the but-for test. I don't want to belabor the point or prolong things, but in the statute, this is a limited dividend corporation. All pilots have a single purpose or a special purpose entity called a urban renewal entity. And in the statute, you're limited to 12% on your gross profit. Actually, it's a net profit calculation. If you go beyond that, and that's below a
Changes the
market.
calculation, am I right?
Yeah, and if you go beyond that, you have to give the excess profits in that year and a year in, year out, back to the city. I just wanted to make that clear. So if you don't meet that but-for test, say
Okay, wait 1 second, somebody else.
15
is gonna
years from
speak
now,
next.
then that kicks in. And I just wanted to bring that up, and that's subject to audit. It's not a fiction.
Thank you, Mr. Beneke. Yes, sir, please state your name and your address.
My name is Colin Edwards. I live at 38 West 19th Street. And we've seen many buildings built in Bayonne recently. But nobody from Bayonne is getting jobs.
Well, we're going to try and change that with this.
That's my problem with this. Everybody is getting tax abatements and this and that, but nobody is prospering from our communities. What?
So, Mr. Edwards, we did an absorption rate study on a lot of the new buildings that were built. Not one of them had union labor.
And that's our problem.
But this is going to have 2,700 union jobs building out for a minimum of 30 to 40 months.
So how?
And then it's going to have 2,100 permanent jobs. So the PLA says that it has to be local unions using that. There's a lot of Bayonne people in those local building trades unions, and that project labor agreement guarantees that they're going to go through the local trades first to get those people.
Okay, so why not put it out there to let these people know
Oh, there's
how to
going to
apply?
be. It's going to be.
Mr. Edwards, we have there's a 38-page, I think it's 38-page agreement between the proposed developer and our local unions. The unions were here a couple of meetings ago, 100 strong. This deal doesn't go through, part of the but for having a project labor agreement where our local unions are satisfied. This is a good thing for Bayonne, not just for unions, but for union members here in Bayonne.
But everybody's not a union member. So I'm asking you, how do these guys apply? Women and men, because everybody wants to work. But nobody puts the information out there for them to go and apply for these jobs. And when you go on a job site, they tell you, they send you there, they send you here, but nothing is done.
I can tell you on this, you will have a union representative there, you'll have, there'll be a job fair, there's a whole lead up to this.
We were told
The
by
gentleman
union
himself.
leaders that
Hold
there'll
on,
be
who
a
am I
job
talking
fair.
to, man? I'm talking
There'll
like
be a
3-4
job
people.
fair. Mr. Carroll, go ahead.
I was going to make that point. At several of these meetings, this is now the third or fourth, at each one of them, they've mentioned that there's going to be a job fair dedicated to this, if it goes
This
through, to
project
make sure
specifically.
the issue you raised is resolved.
We need work. We need to be put down with this.
Yes,
You know,
sir.
a lot of these families have been here for years, and they can't get a job. Makes no sense.
There's a lot of good things happening, Mr. Edwards.
No sense.
A lot of good things happening.
All right?
Jobs. Ms. Gadesky, can we try and make it quick so we
Yes,
can get to the vote?
yes, Council President. Yes, Council President.
Thank you.
Just to clarify something, the administration, when I was speaking earlier, and Mr. Hanley kind of corrected me, but the mayor is the administration. The mayor submits through the TCR, the TRC, the Technical Review Committee, everything about the pilots. And then it moves forward and forward and forward. So there was quite a few pilots that the administration, not so much the new council members, but the administration that is currently sitting in the corner office. Okay? And this is what I meant by the but-for test,
Can you
okay?
please, if you got a question on the financial agreement, please give it to us.
Well, I'm
I
still,
wanna wrap this
I
up.
can't get over the but-for test. I still
I
think
need-
construction is
But
construction.
we've answered that already. We want to move on to the next.
And I need to point out that the administration doesn't pass,
The city
these-
council.
the city council does.
I know, but it moves forward but
It
based
doesn't,
on the
it
technical
doesn't go
review.
forward
separate.
without the council. The council is the ultimate arbiter. The administration proposes, the council passes. So when you say the administration, we mean in the colloquial term, the administration meaning the mayor and council, but it's not always that case. So in this instance, you're right. The administration, the mayor's side of the government proposes it, it comes to the municipal council, the legislative side, and they either pass or deny it.
Okay.
Thank
Ms. Medina?
Anyone else? No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a
Move
motion
it.
to close?
Second.
And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Madeline, I think I'd like to make a statement in favor of this project. I did do some research on my own, and my research led me to a conversation with a man I greatly trust and admire, Mr. Joe Ryan. And he informed me that through the years, 3 or 4 other projects at that exact site had failed, that the purchase agreement hadn't gone through, that something had fallen through, but for this developer's interest in our city, in our location, and in this project, that site might go undeveloped for another 30 or 40 years, leaving the city flat with taxes. So I wholeheartedly am in favor of this project, and I vote aye.
And Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And resolution ordering final passage.
So move.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
03 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, providing for a special assessment of the cost of certain improvements on the property identified as Block 332, Lot 3, Block 360, Lot 2, Block 390, Lots 1 and 2, and Block 391, Lots 1 and 2. This also was introduced and passed first reading on January 25th, was posted in the Jersey Journal and published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage at the meeting of February 15th, and at the meeting of February 15th was postponed to this meeting of March 15, 2023, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And a resolution giving the ordinance second reading is moved by the council as a whole. On that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, providing for the special assessment of the cost of certain improvements on the properties identified, as I read before, Blocks 332, Lot 3, Block 60, Lot 2, Block 390, Lots 1 and 2, and Block 391, Lots 1 and 2. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
So move. Second.
And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And a resolution ordering final passage.
So move.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
04 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, authorizing the guarantee of not to exceed $65 million aggregate principal amount of the city's guaranteed redevelopment area bonds, which was introduced at the meeting held January 25th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered at the meeting of February 15, 2023, and was postponed to this meeting of March 15, 2023, is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And the council as a whole has moved the ordinance be given a second reading. And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title, authorizing the guarantee of not to exceed $65 million aggregate principal amount of the city's guaranteed redevelopment area bonds. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard concerning it. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
Move.
Second.
And on the motion to close, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And a resolution ordering final
Move it.
passage.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
I'd like to read a statement before I vote. This cleans up a very, very large contaminated piece of land, 72 acres total, I believe 64 of them above ground. This represents one of the biggest projects in Bayonne's history. It puts 2,700 union men and women to work in the building trades. It creates film and movie education for our youth. It provides a project labor agreement that guarantees local unions will have jurisdiction over the construction work on this project site. This will put Bayonne Union members to work. It's also going to put other people to work. There are fail-safes in place to protect the city and its revenues. The project will provide an economic benefit to Bayonne for over $1 billion annually. Togus will be the largest taxpayer in the city when this project is completed. And I'm very proud to be a part of this project. The main thing that I'm excited about are the jobs. One of my main focuses is to create jobs, and more jobs. We had business that closed in this town many years ago. When Standard Oil, Exxon, closed, we lost a lot of jobs. I believe it was around 6,000 jobs we lost total in its heyday. With this studio, with UPS coming online, there's a few other projects in the work. Mr. Edwards, this is what I wanted to tell you. We're approaching the addition of a large amount of jobs not seen for decades. This project is a real great addition to this town. I'm very excited for it, and I'm very proud to vote aye.
O5 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, adopting an amended and restated redevelopment plan for the property located at 69-71 New Hook Road, also known as Block 416, Lots 1 and 2, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne, which was introduced and passed the first reading at the meeting held February 15th, was published in the Jersey Journal and posted on the bulletin board as required by law, with notice that it would be further considered for final passage following a public hearing at this meeting of March 15th, and is now before the council for its consideration and a public hearing. And a resolution ordering second reading. Who would like to move it?
Move it.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Second reading is by title. An ordinance adopting an amended and restated redevelopment plan for the property located at 69-71 New Hook Road, also known as Block 416, Lots 1 and 2, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne. The council is now ready to give all persons interested in this ordinance an opportunity to be heard. The council president will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. No protest against, objections to, or statements in favor of this ordinance or its passage has been filed with me. May I have a motion to close?
Move. Second.
And on that motion to close, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And resolution ordering final
So
passage.
moved. Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Okay, our first speaker is Ms. Godesky.
Gail Godesky, 828 Kennedy Boulevard. Mr. La Palusa, I appreciate your statement, and I hope you don't forget about Mr. Edwards.
Will not
Your
forget
word
about
is your
it.
bond.
That's right. You don't have to remind
You
me.
got to
My
take,
word is my
all right,
bond.
but you got to take care of the non-union workers in Bayonne
Right.
as well.
I agree with that.
Okay. Good evening. First of all, I would like to request that the administration and council do something about these helicopters. They appear to be getting more and more frequent and lower. Senator Menendez has already done something with the residents in Jersey City by Liberty Park. So I know, remember, Mr. La Palusa, you said you were going to try and do something. I hope
I wrote a letter to Mr. Menendez back in August and never got an answer. I've called, I'm waiting for an answer again.
Okay, also, you really need to do something about 49th Street between Broadway and Avenue E. People can't even get out of their driveway because of all the traffic. Maybe talk to the New Jersey Turnpike Authority or find a way to redirect the traffic going in and out of the turnpike. Somebody's going to get hurt. It's serious, so try and drive there. It's very dangerous, especially now that you're enhancing that park on Avenue E. I think that's what you're doing. We really need to do something about the double parking and no parking zones. People, and myself included, can't even put a letter in a mailbox. Double parking all this. We need to find more parking or give out tickets and let them pay the tickets. This is getting overly interrupted for the day-to-day work in the city of Bayonne. We're building, you're building and building and building. We got to find the parking spaces. Maybe get in touch with RWJ. They got a huge parking lot on 24th Street. Maybe you could cut a deal with them. We have to think outside the box. As noted previously, please take a note that there's way too much developers and nothing for the residents. Everything is given to the developers. Yes, I understand the project is good for Bayonne. I was never against it. I was against the $65 million. But we have to start taking care of the residents. We're nickel and diming them. We're raising fees. We're doing this, we're doing that, and charging them more money. Start thinking about the people who live and support Bayonne now, instead of 30 years from now when most of us won't even be here to enjoy what the city is doing now. We got to start worrying about the present and deal with the infrastructure, then worry about the future of the buildings, etc. Schools, traffic, roads. Inflation is high, a recession is most likely. We are not already, if we're not already there, it's probably going to be more difficult now with the issue with the low capitalization of some banks to get commercial loans, especially, in my opinion, including construction loans. So I really hope and wish you would consider going forward, have conversations with your peers in the planning and zoning before building another building or doing another tax abatement. Please, you have to reconsider what's happening in the financial market. It's critical right now. It's not a good thing. Please consider that. Let's focus on we keep focusing on the circumference and buildings. Let's focus on the infrastructure. We need an additional school. We need to start worrying about our students, making sure that they're being taken care of, because they're the future. They're the ones that are going to be sitting in your spot when we're all gone. Thank you. I still have 1 minute and 13 seconds, Gary.
Very good. That was excellent. Very proud of you, Gail. A couple of things, though, that you did say. Our supposed peers in planning and zoning usually get to do a study and then send it back to us. So there is communication there. Okay, and also, as far as the fees and the ticket prices going up, we try and do our best. Wait, this is not, you got to speak. This is no. You have to go back to your seat and let me do my talking now.
Oh, Gary, really?
You got to speak. I didn't interrupt you. Now you have to let me speak. We're trying to scrutinize everything that we can. I know I can speak for myself and my colleagues because I talk to them on an individual basis, and everybody's worried about expenses, just like individuals. Just because we're elected doesn't mean we're not worried about those expenses as well. So I just wanted to make those few responses. Ms. Medina?
Okay, moving on. 06 is an ordinance for introduction. It is an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriations limit and to establish a cap bank. And a resolution moved by the council president fixing Wednesday, April 19th at 7 p.m. in the Dorothy E. Harrington Council Chambers as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
07 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, approving a financial agreement pursuant to the 5-year tax abatement for the property located at 717-719 Kennedy Boulevard, which is identified as Block 169, Lot 25.01, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne, and a resolution fixing Wednesday, April 19th as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. It's moved by the Council President. Ms. Weimer, will you second? And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
08 is an ordinance adopting the amended and restated sub-area plan for the 8th Street Rehabilitation Plan for the property identified as 17-29 Evergreen Street, 219-223 Orient Street, which properties are identified as Block 306, Lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, as shown on the official tax map of the City of Bayonne, and a resolution fixing April 19th as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. It's moved by Councilmember Perez. Mr. Carroll, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
09 is an ordinance amending and supplementing the revised general ordinances, Chapter 16, rent control, and a resolution fixing Wednesday, April 19th as a time and place for a public hearing. It's moved by the council president. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
010 has been withdrawn. They have additional questions. It was withdrawn by the
The
council as
council withdrew it.
Okay, you're going to have a conversation with them. 011 is an ordinance of the City of Bayonne amending and supplementing the revised general ordinances, Chapter 7, traffic. It is adding additional meters at West 40th Street. And a resolution fixing Wednesday, April 19th in the Dorothy E. Harrington Council Chambers as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. It's moved by Councilmember Weimer. Mr. Booker, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
No, I don't want to see the addition of parking meters, especially on a side street. We just raised the rates. This isn't in my ward, but I've spoken to the council president, and if this were to happen downtown, I would ask for the same courtesy, and so I vote no.
Mr. Perez.
I feel exactly as Councilman Ms. Carroll. Enough is enough, and I'm voting against this.
Okay. Voting against introduction. Ms. Weimer.
Madeline, I vote against this. I don't think we need the addition of additional parking meters.
Okay, and Mr. La Palusa.
I too am voting no. The additional revenue for the 3 meters will not really make a huge difference. I think this already comes on the back of certain raises that we've already done, and I do not think that it warrants it at this time or that it's necessary, so I vote no.
Okay, fails introduction. Next one is amending and supplementing the revised general ordinances, Chapter 7, traffic, and a resolution fixing April 19th as a time and place for a public hearing and final passage. It is for restrictive parking zones. It is adding 3 and deleting 20. The resolution is moved by the council president. Ms. Weimer, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Consent for communications is a resolution ordering the following communications to be received and filed. It covers C1 through C30. Any questions on the communications? And on the communications, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
OR1 is moved by the council as a whole. It is from Donna L. Mauer, Chief Financial Officer, reporting on vendor payments and recommending payment of the same, and a resolution adopting the recommendation and ordering payment of the claims. Any questions on OR1? And on that one, on OR1, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Madeline, I'm sorry. I need a moment. I don't know that I have OR1. Oh, I apologize.
No problem.
Jen, I'm sorry.
No problem. And Mr. Apalusa.
Aye.
Consent resolutions is moved by the council as a whole. It is a resolution ordering the following resolutions to be adopted. It covers CR 1 through CR 38.
Question?
You want my numbers?
Yes.
CR 9, CR 10, CR 13, CR 14, CR 15, CR 16, CR 29, CR 30, CR 31, CR 33, CR 35, and CR 37.
Ms. Medina, there was a couple of these off as well, right?
Yes, actually,
CR
CR 24 and 28 are withdrawn.
Which are not on the list that she gave. Yeah, sure.
Gail, you and I talked today, was some of the questions about the consents about when we talked about the extension of the contracts? No? Okay. So you've got a specific question on each one. It's not a general question about, okay.
Let me just make sure I pull them all so I don't pull too many.
This is all the numbers that she mentioned.
28 is off, yes.
Well, why not do all the in between? Ms. Medina, you want to have a vote first on the?
Yeah, I'm pulling them so I can.
Okay.
On the remaining consent resolutions, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 9 is authorizing an amendment to agreement number CY 23-007 with Anthony R. Suarez for professional legal services to represent the Bayonne Rent Control Board for a period commencing January 1, 2023, for the original amount not to exceed $15,000, increasing the same in the amount of $25,000 to cover the cost of the revisions to the city's rent control ordinance, thereby making the total contract amount not to exceed $40,000.
Gail Godesky, 828 Kennedy. Did he charge $25,000 to revise an ordinance? Council President? Because that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of revisions, but I don't know if the whole thing was for the revisions.
Isn't that quite a lot of money? Just talking about expenses. How big is the ordinance? And what does it really entail?
Ordinance is 28, I believe, 28 or 29 pages, which I read twice. And there's a lot of gray areas in the rent control, so there was a lot of definitions, a lot of things that they've already been practicing. I wrote 2 pages, I could tell you what's in the rent control, if that's your question.
No, I'm just like concerned, the rent control this is an ongoing issue, but $25,000 to revise an ordinance?
That's what it says, $25,000.
Is that what we pay anybody to revise an ordinance, 25 grand? That's a lot of money.
It depends on how much work they did. This was going back years and years and years, so I would
So you're
imagine
saying it
lawyer
went back
fees
years and years and
are-
years because it was never upgraded and never enhanced? That's why it cost so much?
I don't know about never, but for a long time, no, it has not been enhanced.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, would like to, Mr. Booker, on that resolution.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Just a moment. Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R10 is approving the submission of a grant application and execution of a grant contract with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for Constable Hook Comprehensive Infrastructure Study Project.
This is pertaining to what I discussed earlier, the Exxon and IMTT property that we talked about I think in January meeting going back. Is what would the grant entail? And will we have to do matching funds? And approximately how much is the grant?
So I'm going to ask our lawyer, what a grant contract, what is the specifics? I'm sorry, CR 10. I know what the grant application, the grant contract.
Suzanne Mack can answer that question. She's well-versed in what this is about.
Hi, Ms. Mack. Good.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
So, and thank you so much. So, this evening, I had appeared at the caucus on this one. In November, the council approved a submittal of an application for a New Jersey DOT freight grant. As you know, we've been very successful in getting freight grants from DOT. We've gotten them 3 years in a row. We got it for $3.85 to build a new road down at Mopey for Lincoln Equities. And then recently, we had 2 other grants, which were just awarded at the last meeting, to redo New Hook Road for also a little over $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So this would, when we got an opportunity to apply again, we asked if there was anything else we could do on New Hook Road, but we kind of had figured that out. That was covered. But because not of Exxon so much, or IMTT, but we have that whole area. It's about 20% of downtown Bayonne, but on, out there in the Constable Hook area. We are now looking for redevelopment in that area, and we've
By Oak Street, past Oak Street, is that what you're looking at?
This goes from Le Fonte Drive. That's the Constable Hook area, if you look on our map. From Constable Hook down towards Fifth Street, all that area that a lot of us don't drive on too much, Avenue J, all of that down there, is considered Constable Hook. And now, various people in that area, but it's not just IMTT, it's IMTT, Exxon, Prologis, but it's also Gordon Terminals. There's a lot of other private people down there, and they really don't have sanitary sewers and things like that down there because we've never had businesses down there. You've just had the tank farms, and so we're going to start to do redevelopment. So we actually asked, and the council passed, an application to New Jersey DOT under the freight grant and said, can we use that money to actually study the area to find out, and Joe Nichols is here, he's been working with us on it, how can we figure out what we need down there, because we really never have had sewers down there because of things that, that nature of that area. And so we filled out the application and applied, and DOT came back to us and they said, the freight grant is really more specific to capital projects, but they said, they thought it was a great project, and they just asked us to refile it under a planning grant. And so the only thing we're doing tonight, it's for a request for $1.5 million, no matching funds, to be able to get money to actually do the studies that then the city wouldn't have to pay for. It would be paid for out of the grant.
A sub-question, Ms.
Yes.
Mack, if you would, please. Is this going to impact the Oak Street project? Is
No.
it going to help them in any way, shape, or form?
I'm not quite sure which Oak Street
The
project.
Housing Authority
It
project?
has nothing to do with them.
So it won't impact them at all?
It's not.
It's not going to benefit or deter them?
No, it is not. I don't even think they're in the,
I think the safe answer is,
Not in the
it could
area.
benefit them, it could hurt them, we don't know. The bottom line is it's not related to it.
Okay.
right.
Thank you, Ms. Mack.
Thank you, nice seeing you.
Ms. Gadesky, you might as well stay there. And on that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 13 is approving the application to the New Jersey UEZ Assistance Fund for the Bayonne UEZ Bergen Point Fall Festival in the amount of $26,000.
My question is, $26,000 from the UEZ? We had the Bergen Point Fall Festival last year. Who paid for it last year? I don't believe we ever put in the UEZ Assistant Fund for festivals. So did it come out of our budget last year?
No, it came out of the old UEZ money we had, so they brought back the UEZ program.
Right.
Like they had 15 years ago. So now we have to file an application every time we want to spend money. So we actually have to put an application into the state, say how much it's going to cost. We have to the council has to approve it, and then we submit it, and then they get back to us and let us know whether we can have the money for the festival.
Thank you, Ms. Mauer, but you said the old UEZ money. How much money did we have from the old UEZ? And we were even though the program was being revised, we were able to utilize that money during the revision of the program?
Yes, there was some second-generation money that was left over.
Okay, you don't know how much?
Off the top of my head, I
Could you
don't.
send me an email and let me know how much was left over? I would
The old
appreciate it.
Sure.
All right? And $26,000, that's an awful lot of money. Don't you guys ask for supporters and sponsors for the project? What is the $26,000 going for? Because I know a lot of projects, you ask for sponsors, et cetera, et cetera. Why are we asking for this when we could be helping actual businesses in the entire city of Bayonne? Anybody have the answer to that?
I think I can answer you.
Council President, do you defer?
Yeah, I defer, but I could tell you that the UEZ has to spend some funds for setup, cleanup, things like that. The sponsors are paying for other things. There's animals there, there's rides, there's stands. So the sponsor money does not pay for everything. That's the
Okay,
answer.
so based on what you just said, Council President, you mean to tell me that the $26,000 for our employees of the city of Bayonne are going to get paid by the UEZ that day for cleanup and setup, et cetera, et cetera?
The UEZ does have some people that they pay.
Yes, they only have one or two
So
people,
I can't
one or
answer
two
whether
people.
it's going to pay the whole thing or not, but yes, it will pay some of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 14 is approving the application to the New Jersey UEZ Assistance Fund for the Bayonne UEZ Christmas tree lighting in the amount of $30,000.
Where did the money come from last year? And $30,000 for tree lighting? Can somebody explain to me?
I'll speak to this briefly. This,
Council President, do you defer
do you
to
defer,
Mr. Carroll?
Mr. President?
Oh my
Why
God.
are you asking me? If I say it's okay for him,
But you
or I'm
didn't-
allowing him, it's fine with me, but you don't have to ask me.
Going by Robert's rules,
Go
sir.
ahead. I don't have to go extremely by Robert's rules. I go
no-
by Gary's rules.
But no, but I think we do go by.
Wow.
Robert's rules are the same as Gary's rules. What he's saying is, if someone else answers and he doesn't say, stop answering, it's got to come through. You're asking the question through the chair, what you're supposed to do. If he's deferring to
If I
someone
have
that
a
just,
problem with Mr. Carroll answering, I will stop him from
so
talking.
you don't have to ask, you're asking the question to the chair. If someone else answers, it complies with Robert's rules.
Go
It's
ahead.
okay.
Go ahead, Neil.
I understand. It behooves you to ask that question.
Yes,
of
yes,
Barry,
it does.
So I understand
Yes, it
completely.
does. Yes, it does.
This
And you
was-
could tell that Mr. Coffey was on a 2-week-long vacation
There you
because
go.
he's full of vim and vinegar.
He's rested now.
He's well rested.
No vinegar, lots of Vic.
Lots of them. This, again, I cannot speak to last year, but this is not for a single tree lighting. This is in an effort to help, obviously, with the main tree lighting that goes on with the city and throughout the wards going forward.
So you're going to include the wards? You're going to include the rest of the city on these events?
It is.
Wouldn't that
the
be
hope-
wonderful?
It is the
Instead
hope.
of having a Bergen Point Festival, we could have a tree lighting and a whole entire City of Bayonne festival right up and down Broadway. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Much like the hometown fair.
Yeah, much
And
like the
much like the
hometown
car
fair.
shows,
The
and much
old
like the other
home,
things that have gone on throughout the years.
the old
Throughout
hometown
the wards.
fair. The old hometown fair.
It's the one that was 26 blocks long. Now the hometown fair happens primarily in the second ward. Should I be offended?
Well, I think that the people in the other
Should I be
wards should be
Should Gary
offended.
be offended? The council president?
I'm certainly not offended.
There you go.
And just for the record, I'm not offended either.
You got to take care of the whole city, not just a piece
Oh,
of the
that's the
pie.
plan.
Okay. Thank you.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez. Aye. Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 15 is authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into an agreement with RTSP of Randolph, New Jersey for the 2023 rental of the firearms range for use for the Bayonne Police Department to conduct mandatory training in the amount of $32,000.
Why Randolph? What's happening with the Shea down at 16th Street Park? Why aren't we fixing our own and paying another city $32,000? And correct me if I'm wrong, this never came up before, I don't think, on any kind of agenda for the council. Past councilor, I never remember seeing this. So have we been paying for, I think, 5 or 6 years? We haven't had a shooting firearms range in the city? Why aren't we fixing
We
it?
have had several things come up on the fire.
I don't think so.
I can answer numbers 1 and 2 of your questions. Number 1, we're in the process of trying to negotiate. We went out twice for bids, and the bids came in way over what we had estimated. So we're trying to find the money. Finding the money is always a hard thing for a municipality.
We found 65 million.
No, we didn't find 65 million.
I know. I'm just
We
venting.
extended a credit for 65 million that someone else is going to pay back. This is something that we have to pay back, Gail. And we were expecting a little over $1 million. It came in a lot higher than that. We're guessing with going forward a year, by the time it gets built, we're going to have even more overrun. So we're talking probably about $1.7 million, and we were expecting about 1.3 or 1.2, I think. So I hope by April, we've ascertained what we're going to do. We have a previous bond authorization for, I don't remember the total. 1.3, and we're probably going to have to extend that to like 1.8, Gail, because that's the real world price of it right now. And there's been a lot of back and forth with Chief Geisler and I about how we can appropriate the funds. So this is going to have to be done through a bond, and it's going to be more than we expected to pay. But this is exactly the type of reason. If we're going to spend $32,000 a year over time, it would probably be cheaper if we had our own place and better for our cops.
Yeah, but our officers have to travel all the way to Randolph.
There's no other option right now. We don't have something. If we had something, if we could do it tomorrow, we would do it. But we have to now appropriate the funds, change the previously issued bond ordinance to increase the funds, and then move forward. But this is the real world getting in the way of things.
Hey, I just have a suggestion, Council President. We didn't have any snow removal this year. How much was appropriated in the budget for the snow removal that we did not use, approximately?
Would you know that?
So that money that would have been appropriated for the snow removal this year, instead of bonding, could be utilized to fix our firearms.
I don't think it was enough money to cover anywhere close to that cost. It's usually about 6 figures, about 100,000, I think, somewhere in that area. Okay. We're talking about more than 10 times that amount for the fire range, the shooting range.
All right, well, I'm glad to see that we're moving forward to get our police officers the training range that they need. And I would be 100% for the bonding.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 16 authorizes the mayor and city clerk to enter into an agreement with the BEOF for the provisions of the senior transportation salary and fringe benefits in the amount of $24,000.
Can someone please explain this to me, please?
Samantha? Thank you, Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Very well, thank you.
So prior to COVID, I did an assessment of our senior transportation, just went and looked to see, the route, the worthiness of it. And I watched public buses pull up to the same location and became concerned about, really and truly, was it worth the BEOF or for us to have a public transportation for our seniors? I took an effort to cut that, but the complaints came to City Hall and we reinstated that to a point. I continued to keep an eye on that, but since COVID, in speaking to our seniors, the question that was prevalent was, if senior transportation through the BEOF was not available for seniors, how would that impact you? And going to the store, the COVID impact was tremendous. Moreover, there's a young lady who comes here quite often, and you and I spoke about, that has found comfort in just riding that bus.
Yes.
She is very comfortable in doing that. But the COVID factor was huge, and because we have that COVID dollars, this was absolutely a COVID qualify for seniors. 65 and older is the only individuals who can ride our bus, so that they can have that safety in moving forward. The cost of transportation is tremendous. Gas is up, and things such as that. We are required to come up with that additional funding, and this absolutely is a COVID dollar qualifier through CDBG.
Thank you, Ms. Howard,
You're very
for
welcome.
your concern for us seniors.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 29 is authorizing the application to the New Jersey UEZ program, promotional program for the UEZ Bayonne Business Phase to promote, highlight the UEZ businesses within the city with event and marketing advertisement through calendar year 2023, and authorizing the UEZ coordinator to submit an application to the New Jersey UEZ Assistance Fund in the amount of $44,700.
Wasn't this already approved in February, or was that additional amount? Or am I just thinking of the caucus meeting? I didn't pull up the agenda. But as I asked Ms. Farber at the last meeting, what is this entailing? How are we going to do this, since we don't have a newspaper of any kind besides online? Just wondering, what the plans are. I don't know if Ms. Farber is here tonight to talk about it.
No, but we still have the Jersey Journal, and we still have the Star Ledger. We still have blogs that cost money to advertise. And I would imagine they're going to be doing physical advertisement throughout the town as well. So
Well-
I don't know how many events this covers, but this looks like it covers for the whole year.
But I don't think the Jersey Journal is in my opinion, I don't think, not many people in the city of Bayonne buy the Jersey Journal. There's got to be another way, like, maybe the UEZ could set up a little need-to-know flyer, like with the events coming, and really advertise it, not just, like the community news used to really blast it out there, and it used to be like full-page ads, et cetera. So I'm just concerned that the businesses aren't getting their due. We need to start taking care of the
We'll
businesses.
take that into account, and we can make that suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 30, amending resolution number 22-10-19-040 that authorizes an increase to agreement number calendar year 20083 with the Waterfront Project, Inc., increasing the same in the amount of $75,000 to provide additional community development grant COVID-19 funds for the purpose of supporting the work of the Housing Counselor and social work to assist Bayonne residents facing housing instability.
Ms. Howard, can you explain that one, please?
Thank you, Ms. Howard.
If you'll recall, when I came up and spoke about how the guidelines for CDBG Fund COVID had been kind of loosened a bit from HUD.
Yeah, I remember.
That I gave an agency that gave a perfect example how people are underemployed, are struggling as a result of COVID. This is that particular organization that helps Bayonne residents who are qualified with, landlord-tenant issues. So, and they take on quite a few. You remember I told you it was $75,000, and they had 80, I think it was 80 at the time. That number has since increased, and so their dollars go towards helping families or individuals who are in landlord-tenant situations that are as a result of COVID. The long term.
What type, can you just give me a general idea of what time, is it evictions, et cetera?
It is evictions. It is evictions, and where they're coming up with these agreements or helping them as opposed to evictions to get payment settlements where, they spread the payments out over a period of time. But they're going into courts and helping them negotiate that.
And these people know where to go to ask for the help?
They come,
Do they come through the city, through Sue's area? Or?
They come from all over the place. We actually, because of our rental assistance program, they come and that actually serves as a referral to them. So yes. Moreover, I think if we have information at the courts, so the courts in some cases will tell them, maybe, or they're going to come to our agency, then they get referred through that way, or even through the courts, their information. I think Ombudsman has information and they send them to the waterfront project.
Perfect, thank you, Ms. Howard.
You're very
Ms.
welcome.
Howard, can you stay, because the next couple
For
pertain to
me
you
as well? Okay.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R31 is amending Resolution 22-1109-039 that authorized an increase to agreement number calendar year 20080 with the Bayonne Youth Center, increasing the same in the amount of $72,000 to provide additional community development grant COVID funds for the purpose of providing additional outreach initiative as a result of the pandemic, thereby making the total contract amount $166,000.
Besides housing, Ms. Howard, what additional outreach initiatives are we talking here?
So the Bayonne, or you're speaking specifics about?
Bayonne Youth Center.
Bayonne Youth Center,
Yes.
they do an after-school program where moms and dads are having to work longer hours. They do the homework assistance, and it is they also do projects for the holiday giveaway. I don't know if this one includes that. It may do. It doesn't have the specifics, but they do a lot of things that are actually pandemic friendly, if you will. But specifically the children who are looking for homework assistance, that program has grown in that.
Thank you, Ms. Howard.
You're very welcome.
Hang on one second. On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
Let's see, R33
33.
is amending Resolution 2301-18039, accepting the Title III grant funds from the Hudson County Department of Health and Human Services, Area Agency on Agency, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into an agreement with the Bayonne Economic Opportunity Foundation in the amount of $455,169.96 for the purpose of executing a senior nutrition feeding program utilizing the grant funds for a period of 1 year commencing January 1st.
Ms. Howard, is this just Meals on Wheels?
This is Meals on Wheels, nothing to do with CDBG. But I will say that, the Bayonne Economic Opportunity Foundation Meals on Wheels program has served as a model. We've had other Meals on Wheels programs to come and see what we do and how we do it. I have spoken with Joyce Person-Perkins, Brian Poffel at the county level, and I have since written a letter to our freeholder Copez asking that they consider additional dollars. What's happening is our Meals on Wheels program is not being addressed through the minimum wage. We're not getting increases for that. So, but we do beautifully. And I have to give credit to my staff because they cut coupons. They do an amazing job on mitigating costs. This is that dollar amount, and if you look through past resolutions, the dollar amount really does not change a lot. And the BEOF is coming out of pocket a great deal. So, this is probably my plea to hopefully have the freeholders to consider our budget, address the minimum wage that's going up to $15 an hour, because currently our cost is $15 an hour, but we get the equivalent of $9 per unit, which is not enough. So, but we still do a beautiful job.
Yes, you do, and I thank you for that. And let me ask you, besides going to the BEOF for information on that, do they go through Ms. Kavanaugh's department, the health department, to be informed about how to get the Meals on Wheels?
That we do work with Ms.
together?
Kavanaugh's office and Gonzalez, Joyce, the Office on Aging does a lot of referrals. And we currently have a waiting list as a result of, the mitigating of the costs. So,
Why a waiting list?
waiting list because we're having to cut costs. The BEOF is having to supplement the program so much, and it's taken so much out of our coffers to do that. So we're having to create a waiting list so that we don't exhaust ourselves.
That's very sad.
Yeah, I agree.
Very, very sad.
Okay.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 35 is authorizing the mayor and/or his designee to submit an application to the County of Hudson as a co-applicant for the Local Efficiency Achievement Program Challenge Grant in the amount not to exceed $150,000 and shared services in the administration of the grant.
Director?
So again, this application is being, submitted by the city and Hudson County for a program that is done by the Department of Community Affairs, again, for LEAP. And what this grant is to be used for is to study the needs of our, population that need food and services related to that. And again, there's no money coming from the city of Bayonne on this. This is all going to be services that are provided by Hudson County. But in order to do that and be part of this program, the county, Hudson County needs the city of Bayonne to sign off on this application.
Well, Mr. DeGise is always on the television saying, like, they're knocking on doors, and if residents of Hudson County need help, the county is there, so make sure some of that money gets fed through the BEOF so there's not a waiting list on Meals on Wheels.
And again, this program will help, with that.
Thank you, Director.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Just to touch on that for a minute, I'm voting aye because I'm in support of this and anything we can do for that program. But if you'd also like to send us a copy of that letter you sent to Mr. Kopaz in the county,
so
I'd love to support it.
Yes, and again, so what this letter came from County Executive DeGise asking for, the mayor's support on this. But
Ms. Howard also sent one, I apologize, I was referring to, she said that she asked for extra aid and assistance from the county.
Yes.
Especially for that program, which I'd like to.
Sure. And again, this is, for this one specific grant, this is to, study the needs amongst Hudson County and the municipalities that partake in this program, which again, we want Bayonne to, be part of this program.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
CR 37 is amending resolution number 22-10-19033, which authorizes an increase to agreement number calendar year 20084 with the Bayonne Economic Opportunity Foundation to increase the amount of $11,600 to provide additional community development grant COVID funds for the purpose of providing a grab-and-go services as a result of the pandemic, thereby making the total contract $41,600.
Can you explain this grab and go, and how do people know about this and what exactly it is?
So the grab and go is also a part of our senior nutrition program. It is typically where people are, just not comfortable coming to, they're not eligible for the Meals on Wheels delivery, which are individuals who are homebound, but they're not comfortable or have compromised immune systems to where sitting in groups may be of great danger to them. And so we create a grab and go format, especially during the holidays. Thanksgiving, we used to do the very, very large Thanksgiving dinner where people are sitting, congregating 400 deep at Back Bay. We have not done that in a while.
Right.
And so as a result, that doesn't mean people don't need Thanksgiving dinner. We create a grab and go format.
Where do they go to get that?
The grab and go can be at either the Back Bay location or the 4th Street Story Court location. We typically try to do this for the holidays because we see a tremendous uptick in people seeking the holiday meals. The next recent one or next closest one would be Friday, which would be our St. Patrick's Day.
And what about Easter and Ramadan coming up as well?
Easter, not Ramadan, and I'm looking at incorporating the Muslim holidays, but that's a good one.
And Easter's included?
Easter is included.
And how are you planning on advertising this? This is important.
We really don't advertise it because, again, we're mitigating costs, but our regular individuals know, and then they know they can bring a friend. It just happens. It's just a natural phenomenon that more people show up on the holidays for these programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
A question. Can you explain how the grab and go works, the packaging of it and all that?
Absolutely. So some of the holidays, like Thanksgiving, for example, we actually work with a caterer, and to shout out to Rocky and the Chandelier, who does a beautiful job Thanksgiving. He actually packages, and my girls and guys are wonderful in knowing what we do. We get the 40-ounce containers that keeps the hots from the colds, so forth and so on. BCB Bank sponsors our bags, and then we have children come in from the high school looking for learning service
So
hours.
it's a microwavable
It is a
type of
microwavable.
package?
It is a
Okay.
microwavable package that they carry when they get it. It's a dessert, their drinks, everything is just ready to go for them to eat when they get ready.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Howard.
you.
And Ms. Howard, is that a program that we could communicate to other seniors that perhaps are not in either of those two locations or couldn't get there?
We absolutely could.
Okay.
What I'll do is share that information along with the letter from that I sent to Mr. Lopez.
Okay.
I'll send that information to
That would
the
be
council.
terrific. Thank you.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R1 is approving emergency temporary budget number 3 in the calendar year 2023 municipal budget. Would like to move it.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a question?
When do we plan on having the 2023 budget finalized? Is there any date set or anything?
Ms. Mauer?
You'll introduce it in May, and then it'll be approved in June. That's half the year. We can't get it sooner.
Working on it, I'm still finalizing numbers, so a lot of the revenues I don't have, so if I had it, I would do it, I would do it tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Mauer.
On that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R2 is authorizing the execution of a redevelopment agreement with Togus Urban Renewal LLC for the redevelopment of the property identified as Block 332, Lot 3, Block 360, Lot 2, Block 373, Lots 1, 2, 13, 14, and 15, Block 390, Lots 1 and 2, Block 391, Lots 1 and 2, and Block 11, Lot 5 and 6, as shown on the official tax map. Would like to move it.
Move it.
Second.
And on that resolution,
I have a question first for Mr. Wuchaskala. During my reading of the redevelopment agreement, I saw that they're going to be able to close the walkway when they want to do filming. But I had in my discussion with a couple people, they were concerned about that. So I'm wondering if you could explain that a little bit better about when they can close it and what they have to do.
Yeah, it's a good point, Council.
Usually for filming, excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. So there are actually two provisions that pertain to filming. We've got the waterfront walkway, which is actually a state requirement. It's part of their waterfront development permit. Originally, Togus was looking for the city to take ownership of the walkway. The city did not take ownership. Just like waterfront development and sidewalks along the entire, Hudson waterfront. They are also, part of it is the city is accepting a dedication of a park as well on a portion of the property. In both regards, their RDA does provide that they are, entitled to close it if they do any filming along the walkway. And candidly, it's no different than filming that we've seen in movies along the Hoboken waterfront and Jersey City, improved walkways. The RDA itself provides, just in general, that the redeveloper has to comply with all of our local ordinances, county statutes, regulations, as well as state regulations. So whatever we have on the books, and that applies across the board. I mean, we got a very significant city code with requirements. And I would just point out, because I did look into this issue, we actually have our own code that pertains to filming within the city. It actually mandates that, anybody looking to do any type of filming production within the city, and that's whether it's on public or private land, is actually required to go through a permitting process. And it's a submittal that's made to the city. There are fees that are established within there. There are time frames. The requirements within our code itself mandate that they specify what the dates and times are, the duration during which filming, may occur in those locations. It also authorizes administration to require hiring of our local police department, EMTs, fire department, if it's deemed necessary in that regard. So we actually have had that requirement. That would fall under the catch-all provision of compliance with any issue, with any laws, statutes, regulations. I would also note the fact the Hudson, the walkway that is part and parcel of this project, part of their waterfront development permit, will be subject to a NJDEP approved form of, they call it a conservation easement restriction. It's really an access easement that's going to maintain access through that. So in furtherance of that, again, similar to everywhere else, there is a requirement to notify the DEP as well. So if there's going to be a closure for a filming purpose, they've got to provide a notice to the DEP that they're going to do it on such and such a date and for a set period.
So on the walkway, they'll have to apply for a permit through the city, but not necessarily in the studio. It's
Correct.
the land itself.
Whatever happens in the studio happens in the studio. So, we have the catch-all provision, but Council President, to the extent that you've raised the issue and it's well taken, the resolution that's before you does provide that City Council and Special Redevelopment Council can make revisions, and it's, before the document is finally executed. And I thought it would actually be a good idea with respect to that specific provision that we will revise the RDA essentially to provide they can, closures for filming purposes subject to Section 4-19 of the Bayonne City Code, all other statutory, federal, or state requirements and the like. And that will cover it. It's really a belt and suspenders, but it's to address a good point.
So we should put this off till next month? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I think this is really just a minor change that we can just add to the document to the extent it was requested. I'm not suggesting we defer it. Really, I will tell you.
I would like the revision in there.
Absolutely.
So we could approve this with the condition of that revision.
That's correct. That's what I'm looking for. And essentially, I haven't written out yet, but the provision will say, subject to compliance with the Bayonne Code, Section 419, all other code sections, and meeting NJDEP and any other statutory regulatory requirements.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Matthew Posada. I represent 1888 Studios, and I can confirm we have had a conversation with the City Council and Redevelopment Council that we will comply with both the state requirements and also the municipality's requirements for permitting for filming on the waterfront walkway.
Thank you, Mr. Posada. Appreciate that. Ms. Godesky?
That conversation brought up a question. I understand the city, we didn't take over the walkway, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So
Okay, but what about insurance as far as injuries, et cetera, goes?
all obligations with respect to maintenance, ownership, operation of that waterfront walkway lie with the redeveloper. It's part and parcel as well to their NJDEP public access permit. The city is assuming no responsibility, liability, or indemnification in that regard. It is their responsibility, no different than the waterfront walkways all along the Hudson River waterfront that cross through private properties, redevelopment properties, but provide public access.
Is that included in the document that they're approving?
That is correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Again, subject to their compliance with our ordinances to prevent this from being closed unduly and too often, I vote aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Yes, voting with that condition, I vote aye.
R3, 4, and 5 have been withdrawn. R6 is moved by the Council President authorizing an application to the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank financing program for the lead service line replacement project. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer? Aye. Mr. La Palusa?
Aye.
R7 is authorizing the mayor and/or his designee to enter into a tax appeal settlement agreement with SMZ Bayonne LLC for 1127-1157 Kennedy Boulevard, also identified as Block 50, Lot 2, and authorizing the mayor and/or his designee to take any actions necessary to effectuate the resolution and the resulting judgment. It's moved by the council president. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
On the resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R8 is authorizing the City of Bayonne's water and sewer utility engineer and Viola North American licensed C4 collection systems operator and the distribution system W4 license operator as needed or required to execute any and all documents on behalf of the City of Bayonne, including but not limited to the NJDEP TWA1 application, NJDEP WQM03 statement of consent form, and/or the NJDEP WQM06 engineer's report for domestic treatment works approval application in furtherance of any and all sanitary sewer applications submitted to the state of New Jersey by developers in connection with redevelopment and other projects within the City of Bayonne and the water extension permit documents.
Ms. Gadesky.
Well, who'd like to move it first?
I'll move it.
And a second? Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Armstrong will be reviewing anything that happens with this, right? He's going to be our lookout to make sure that Viola is doing what they're supposed to be doing?
So for right now, he has the C4 license,
Yes.
and that license goes with, experience in that you can't get a C4 without going
Yes.
through C1, 2, and 3 first. So he's going to be our representative to request any documents on that?
Okay, but who is he going to be communicating all aspects of this to?
It
Direct-
says applications are submitted to the state of New Jersey.
But who's going to be reviewing it and making sure that it's like accurate, et cetera? Any follow-up, or we trust him explicitly to do everything?
Who's going to be
For the
following
benefit
him?
of us.
Mr. Nichols?
Hi, Joe. Welcome back from retirement. You're missed here, Joe, you're missed.
Anyway, let me just clarify that.
Joe, you want to come over here?
Oh, you got to go to there now, Joe.
The operator, the operator, Veolia, has the C4 and W4 licenses. Mr. Armstrong is a professional engineer. He's our only municipal engineer on staff. He is overseeing all the sewer, water and sewer extension applications go to him, but they are reviewed by the state of New Jersey. But Bayonne has to say, yes, please look at this, okay? Because the state of New Jersey, first of all, Passaic Valley has to say, yes, we have adequate capacity to treat this new sewage. And then the state of New Jersey has to say, yes, that falls within your permit. And it's the same for water extension permit. We have approximately 10.5 million gallons of water a day. That's our allocation. But we can only use like 7 million and change of that because we have to have, for emergencies, we have to have fire capacity and all that.
Absolutely.
So to make sure we don't go over it, anytime there's a new development, they have to get these two permits, as Council President was saying. And John Armstrong has been here for many years,
Yes, sir.
and pretty much, all these applications, we just had an issue where in the past, the resolutions didn't cover the municipal engineer signing it. It actually allowed the Director of Public Works to sign it, who still can. So we had a kind of crisis to get something done, and the director was kind enough to sign it. But John oversaw that operation. So we saw that there was a flaw in our existing system, and we wanted to add him to it. And then the operator used to be Suez, now it's
Right.
Veolia,
Viola.
and we had to update the information in the resolution so that we wouldn't run into this problem again.
Do we anticipate, with all the new construction and everything, having to increase our capacity with the water? with everything going on, including the new sewers, et cetera?
We have sufficient water capacity,
As of, with everything in the pipeline now that's currently on the table to be built?
Yes, unless we get a new cruise ship or something that's not, the cruise ship originally used a lot of water. Our biggest customer is the power plant.
Okay, let's stay on the
Bayonne
topic.
Energy, yes.
Okay.
But on this particular thing, on the permitting, the sewer side is the one that we have to watch, because there is a finite limit to that.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols, and it's great to see you.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R9 is authorizing the use of Community Development Block Grant funds to acquire the property located at 440 Avenue C, which property is identified as Block 225, Lot 46, as shown on the official tax map of the city. It is moved by the Council President. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on R9, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R10 is authorizing the Director of Planning, Zoning, and Development and the Law Director to negotiate and enter into a purchase and sale agreement with the property owner for the acquisition of the property located at 440 Avenue C. It's moved by Ms. Weimer. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R11 is moved by the Councilman Weimer. Mr. Perez, Mr. La Palusa, will you second?
Second.
And it is seeking permission from the Director of Local Government Services for the approval of a dedication by writer in the calendar year 2022 budget for gifts and bequests trust fund for contributions to the Bayonne Police Department Explorers Program.
I'll move it, but we have a question
No,
as well.
we already did that already.
I'm glad to see this. How much are we going to be providing? Do we have a dollar amount or any idea?
This is for donations, any gifts or donations that we get, we have to get permission from the state in order to put them in a separate trust fund.
Okay, do we have any gifts and contributions yet?
There are something in that account. I think it's ongoing. It was just never set up. So when the state looked at our financials, they picked the next two, the three in a row. There was no rider ever set up for them, so we're setting them up.
Great, thank you.
And on R11, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R12 is also a dedication by writer in the calendar year 2022 municipal budget for gifts and bequests trust fund for the contributions to the Bayonne 9/11 Memorial Fund. It's moved by Councilmember Perez. Mr. Carroll, will you second?
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R13 is also a dedication by writer in the calendar 2022 budget for gifts and bequests trust fund for contributions to the Bayonne Police Department LEAD program. It's moved by Councilmember President La Palusa. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
On the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R15 is approving budgetary appropriations transfer number 2 in the calendar year 2022. It's moved by the Council President. Mr. Perez, will you second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I missed R14.
You want to do R15 out of turn since we
Yeah, we'll
already
do it out of turn.
seconded?
Yep. It's approving the appropriations transfer. And on that one, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R14 authorizes the use of the 3-year average for the reserve for uncollected taxes calculation. It's moved by Ms. Weimer. Mr. Booker, will you second? And on the resolution, Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R16 is authorizing and directing the planning board to reopen and amend the 8th Street Rehabilitation Plan for the property located at 218-220 Broadway, which is identified as Block 319, Lot 26.
Question?
What is being amended on this project?
Ms. Mack?
Uh,
I think the.
Delta Gas.
Yes.
R16 rehabilitation plan?
Yes, so this is a project on Broadway. It used to be the Delta
Gas station.
gas station, and the developer who purchased the property has requested that he be able to put in a mezzanine. Instead of the first floor being 12 feet, when you do this mechanical parking, you go to 20 feet.
Yeah.
And so he's requesting that he do that. There is no change in the number of units in the building and no change in the parking requirements. What it will result in is that at the top floor, the site will be slightly raised, but it will not be raised in the front. It'll only be in the middle, so that there may be...
So it's not facing the tracks or anything?
No.
Okay.
No. So it's actually, it's a very minimal request. It was looked at by several planners, to check it out. And of course, the council will look at it once the plan is reopened. This is only to reopen the plan, not to approve the amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Mack.
Thank you.
Who'd like to move it?
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R17 authorizes the mayor and city clerk to execute an amendment to the agreement CY 22070 with McManlin Scotland Bauman LLC for professional legal services as the city's water sewer utility attorney for a period of 1 year commencing January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, for the original amount not to exceed $70,000 and extending the same through April 30th, 2023 for an additional amount not to exceed $30,000, thereby making the total contract amount not to exceed $105,000. Who'd like to move it?
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R18 is amending Resolution 23-02-15032, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an access agreement with PPG Industries, Inc., for the purpose of performing long-term groundwater sampling and long-term maintenance in connection with the remediation work being done at Dennis P. Collins Park. Who'd like to move it?
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
We're getting there. R19 is authorizing the execution of an owner's consent form for the filing of an NJDEP waterfront development permit application requesting construction of the Maritime Industrial Mooring Pier on the city property concerning the Riparian Grant. Look, believe me, I can say it. But
I'm just trying to help you.
no problem. After a while, it's just like...
It's all a blur.
Yeah, it is starting to get that way. Is located at the foot of Commerce Street within the lands of which the city is successor of the interest in. Who'd like to move it?
Second.
Thank you. And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R20 is authorizing the planning board to reopen the Maris redevelopment plan for the property located at 1241 Kennedy Boulevard, 1241 Kennedy Boulevard rear, and West 57th Street. Who'd like to move it first? Who'd like to move it?
Move it.
Second.
Ms. Gadowski?
What is this in reference to, please?
I can speak to that, Council President, if you'd like. So,
Richard Scala, go ahead.
yeah, so actually, if you read the resolution itself, and I know we're only looking at the heading here regarding the reopener, The request to reopen is for the city to consider certain interim uses with respect to the subject property. This is not uncommon in our redevelopment plans. The way our interim uses typically are considered is you get 1 year, and it is subject to planning board review and extension on an annual basis.
And that will be sent back to the council as well, right?
And just to be clear here, this is just to consider amendments. So, if I can finish.
Yes.
So, staff, just like the 8th Street rehabilitation plan, they would study it, make recommendations. Those recommendations would be presented to the planning board in the first instance, and ultimately any recommendations that may be made would come back to the council for an ordinance and a second reading, just like any amendment, like any redevelopment plan and any amendment there too.
Okay, Ms. Mack, you want to add something? Yeah, she might answer your question.
Yeah, I just, I don't want to contradict what Mr. Wicasala said. It was a little simpler than that. When we were looking at the plan, we put interim uses in the definitions, which meant that we intended to put it in the plan, and we just didn't put the paragraph in the plan that said interim use. So we didn't add the word interim use in the body, and we went back and we've been looking through some plans, and so staff actually this was not a request from the developer, it was a request from staff.
But interim use, I've noticed, and several people have noticed, commercial vehicles being parked there constantly when they can't park, off-road somewhere, they're using the Marist property. And if I recall, the sale of Marist was never approved by the council. Am I wrong?
No. The final transfer, the sale of Marist, that we never purchased, we never owned Marist. The last document that got the city of Bayonne whole did not have a resolution approving it.
Okay, so what are we going to do about that?
There's nothing to do about it. We're whole. We expended $100,000 to go into a contract. We would have been in breach of that contract because the school system told us at that point that they didn't want to purchase the property anymore. They couldn't purchase the property. It was going to be too expensive.
Right.
Our redevelopment council at that time, Mr. DeMarco, went out and found somebody to step into the shoes of the city of Bayonne / the school system. He found Mr. Califer, and he also found Mr. Forgione, who would agree to sit down with the school system, figure out if they could figure out a way to take by way of assignment our interest in purchasing the property.
Right, but if you...
And then they agreed to do that, and then Mr. Califer failed to be able to live up to that because he passed away. So then a second developer, the people who eventually purchased it, were gotten by Mr. DeMarco.
You're full of vim tonight. Go ahead.
I got vim, vinegar, and vigor. And in turn, they stepped into our stead. We were under a deadline, and Mr. Wicasala and I spent several years in this transaction, and the directive was we want our $100,000 back. The city of Bayonne needs to be made whole, and that's what took place. And we had a whole discourse about this at a municipal council meeting.
Yep.
There's nothing to be done.
Yes, but at the same time, I'm wondering if this amendment means additional sale or agreements with the New Jersey Turnpike.
It's just for use, the interim use.
Yes, but
Not for sale.
but you're reopening and amending. You're
can tell you that
reopening and amending.
We're amending it to allow for interim uses.
Only subject to a plan being prepared and presented to the council, which will act on it accordingly, either yes or no.
Thank you, Mr. Scala.
Ms. Mack,
Welcome.
Mr. Wicasala, excellent. Thank you for your information.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll. Aye. Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Aye. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R21 is authorizing the extension of agreement CY 22015 with Millennium Strategies for grant writing and consulting services through February 28, 2023. to extend it through March 15, 2023, for an additional amount not to exceed $5,500, thereby making the total contract amount $82,500. Would like to move it.
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R22 is authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Brown & Brown Metro LLC for insurance broker services for employee health benefits for a period of 1 year commencing April 1st through December 31st, 2023. And the broker will not be compensated by the city for broker services for its health, prescription, and dental coverages. There's a whole lot of nonsense there. Who'd like to move it?
Move it.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R23 is authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into an agreement with McCabe Environmental Services for professional services as a certified lead-based paint inspector for a period of commencing March 16th through December 31st, 2023, for an amount not to exceed $20,000. Would like to move it.
Move it.
Second.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Aye. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
24 authorizes the agreement with Matrix New World Engineering for professional license remediation services for a period commencing March 16th through December 31st, 2023, for an amount not to exceed $57,500.
Move it.
And on the resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R25 is entering into an agreement with Matrix New World Engineering for professional environmental consulting services for a period commencing March 16th through December 31st, 2023, for an amount not to exceed $17,500. Would like to move it.
Move it.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer.
Aye.
Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
26 is an agreement with Hoplite Communications for 5G and other telecommunication consulting services for a period commencing March 16th through December 31st, 2023, payable from escrow accounts established by telecommunications providers for 4 one-year renewal options with the city's sole discretion.
Move it.
Second.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R27 is authorizing an agreement with Millennium Strategies for grant writing and management consulting services for a period of commencing March 16th through December 31st, 2023, for an amount not to exceed $57,000 with the 4 renewable option, 1-year options. Would like to move it. And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
R28 is an agreement with Integrated Microsystems, Inc. for information technology management, support, and procurement consulting services commencing March 16, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, for an amount not to exceed $100,000.
So move.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And one additional item is authorizing the Director of Public Safety to renew its service agreement with Visual Computer Solutions, which does business as Jobs for Blue, for police extra duty administrative services from March 1st, 2023 through February 28th, 2024.
So move.
And on that resolution, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa.
Aye.
And I have nothing else. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
Happy St. Patty's Day, everyone.
And who'd like the second?
Second.
And on adjournment, Mr. Booker. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Weimer. Mr. La Palusa?
Aye.